got an ethical state that has capacity. We are sitting with three problems to answer your question. The first problem is the dysfunctionality with a lot of municipalities. So we go to court, we win court cases, we hold inquiry reports, but they're not implemented because of the dysfunctionality at the municipal level with a lot of municipalities, if you look at the report by the Auditor General. The second issue, of course, is the capacity within the state. A lot of cases that we have won, but they are not being able to be implemented because the municipal manager does not know what they are doing. So I'm saying for all of us, we need to change strategy. Accountability is not enough. How do we craft our strategy towards institution building? From the perspective of a functional state, from the perspective of capacitated state, and of course the issues that the deputy minister spoke of, corruption. Corruption impinges on the right on socio-economic rights because money that is set aside for water, for electricity, gets diverted to nonsense, to things that are really not for the people. So accountability is not enough. Litigation is not enough. How do we work together to build an ethical, functional, and capacitated state? Because that is where the implementation of, of court judgments are. I used to be the director of the Center for Applied Legal Studies at VETS. We won a case 7 years ago, the provision of water in Limpopo, 7 years ago. That case is still not being implemented in Sekhukhune municipality. We've gone back to court for contempt of court decision. But every time we go there, there's a new municipal manager. There's a new mayor. Or there's no money, austerity and corruption. So I'm saying that as we talk about access to justice, it's not only about literacy, the knowledge about the Constitution. It's not only about the access to lawyers. It's not only about accountability. It's about how do we help the state to be ethical, to be functional, and to be capacitated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll come back to these points a bit later. I'll give you a break, but and I think you've raised a different point, which is nation building. Have we reconciled our issues? How do we, and having these open forums, stakeholder gatherings, is really to now unpack those and also to appreciate it from the different sectors of our country. So Dr. Kimi, you're with the Foundation for Human Rights. We've had this conversation more times, and we've not always agreed, but we've also, I would like to think, moved a step closer each time to appreciating the issues from our different perspectives. Maybe some thoughts about just reconciliation and what are the aspects, and also just what civil society, because you represent a broad group, civil society speaks to, and one of the teams that you also support together with us at the department is that of the National Action Plan, which looks at discrimination from all aspects, which Commissioner Madlingozi raised earlier. So quite a bit. We'll come back to you if we can't finish all of those in the first round.
Yeah, that is quite a mouthful. I think, Chepo has touched on this issue of reconciliation and nation building. And that means that we have to deal effectively with what's happened in the past. I was pleased that the Deputy Minister in his speech read out the preamble to the Constitution, and in particular the line that we honor those who have sacrificed for our democracy. And I posed this question when I met with the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development. And I asked them to reflect on what had happened with the unfinished cases of the TRC and whether those actions reflected that we had honored those who had given their lives for our democracy? I think the answer was self-evident in that instance. So I think this issue of reconciliation, it's a tricky issue. I think this question of social cohesion has been simplified in many cases to issues of national symbols or national pride. And I think that's a mistake. I think asking people simply to have pride in a sort of flag or an anthem is not sufficient to build reconciliation. The project, of course, will require socioeconomic transformation, the issues that Chepo raised, a capable state. I think as civil society, even though accountability is not sufficient, I think our role is to assist the state to be accountable. And say that is what civil society is there for. Not just to be a partner, but when we don't deliver on what we've promised, it's to actually to hold us to account and try and ensure that there are consequences. I want to make just one comment on how the Constitution is conceived. And this tagline that's behind us, justice for all, access to justice for all. And I think when we look around the world and see the ways in which rights are being degraded, I think it's a warning for us that our commitment to those rights must be complete and inviolable. The right to life and dignity. It does not that the person whose rights are being violated is a criminal, or is a foreigner, or someone with political or social views we don't agree. Incumbent on us, and it's incumbent particularly on the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, to hold the line when the miners at Stilfontein rights are being violated, their due process rights are being violated. If we stay silent, if we let it pass, then we're sending a message to our country that it's not justice for all. It's justice for those who we think deserve justice. And who we think deserve justice is of no importance at all. We backtrack on that, and I think we can all see what the consequences will be. And so it may not be popular, it may not be nice, you may, get some pushback, but it's your constitutional duty to follow that line, to say it is justice for all. Those rights are inviolable. So when Imam Hendricks is assassinated, it's easy to stand up and say this man's rights have been violated. But those people who killed him didn't think he had those rights. And they were making a judgment that some people's rights don't matter. When the state does that, it sends a very frightening message, and we have to stand up against that.
So, Commissioner Madlingozi, you really set the tone and said, let's open it up. And as Minister said earlier, we're not going to put a Band-Aid. We're going to open it up and start cleaning the wounds. So I'm going to come back to the panelists after questions from the audience. We'll only be taking 5 for this round, but before you all start getting worried, we've got a whole day of questions. So if we don't capture your questions in this round, we'll still have time through the rest of the afternoon. I also want to say, for those of you who have got some burning complaints with the department, there are stands outside, just along parallel to this hall, and so you might wish to, as well as the commission. So please use the opportunity to put your information down and the complaints that you have, should we not be able to get through all of the questions. Now, there's so many hands going up, and I'm going to end up being unpopular because I'm going to have to pick and choose. And as I said, we've got the entire day, and we'll consolidate by the end of the afternoon of those questions that we didn't have. And those of you smiling at me, it doesn't mean your question is going to be the one I'm going to select, because I'm getting all kinds of looks and nods and winks at the moment. So I'm going to start, and if you don't mind, I'm going to stand so I can see everyone. I'm going to start at the back of the hall. I'm going to take 3 questions and then another 2. I think that might be quicker. Let's see how that goes. So the lady with the beautiful yellowish mustard headscarf, yeah, you're looking around you, I'm referring to you. So you'll be the first in the audience to ask a question. I couldn't resist your headgear, ma'am, in front, and the smile, so it did work, so you'll be second. I see a gentleman in the back with also, everyone's wearing more predominantly yellow a cap, yeah. I think you have a green t-shirt, green shirt. Yes, that's you, you'll be number 3. Ma with the lovely hat on, number 4. And let's see now, okay. You will go number 5, yes, in the front. So, is there a roving microphone? Perfect, let's go.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Colette Letlojane. I'm with the Human Rights Institute of South Africa, and I'm also grateful to what the Department of Justice has done. So without waste of time, I'm inspired by the panelists, and one of the things that I want to contribute or ask is there is lack of political will in our government. I think issues of capacity, issue of using the mechanisms we've seen going to the courts, getting judgment, and nothing happening. I think the issue of political will, and also adding that out of the over 200 local municipalities, under 10 had clean audits. So where are the prosecutions? Arrest of those suspects that have abused the state funds. The other point is the African Union has identified justice and reparation for people of African descent. What programs is the South Africa Human Rights Commission is preparing, and how can we collaborate together with civil society? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, my leader, facilitator, and appreciate the leadership. My name is, I'm Reverend Khololo, the founder of Naume Widowed Forum, also the community worker, especially in faith-based organization. But I'm here wearing the cap of the vulnerable women, which are widows, and also the widowers. I think in 2018, I had an engagement with Department of Justice, and I appreciate Advocate Mashabani, who insisted that I form part of Stakeholder in the Justice Department. But there is one question that no one wants to answer ourselves as widows. You know, when you lose your partner, there are a lot of controversies. That's why we are part of justice. And one thing, issue of letter of executorship, which I feel like the rights of the widowed are being violated, or maybe those that have lost their loved ones. There's this issue that when you apply for a letter of executorship, as an example, you need an attorney. I think Advocate is part of it. Tebo, you are part of it. You can help us out. Some of us, we are community organization that helps widows We are up to date with the processes of court processes, even at the Justice Department. But after you have filled all the forms, they are up to date. When you get there, they said, you need an attorney because your issue is over 250,000. That time you don't have money. Now, like now, I have a client that I applied somewhere in November. They're waiting for the letter of an attorney, but the process is complete. Now, the issue with this poor lady, all her things have lapsed. The child was supposed to go to school. He didn't go to school because the monies are still held at the department. Now, when I speak to the people from Home Affairs, they said it's a law. There's nothing we can do. So there's no way, even if I can speak to the Home Affairs people, they're not going to help me. Now, because you are there, the leadership is there. Somebody can speak on this law that it allows us, the community workers that have got insight, to help people without bringing the attorney that is going to need 10,000 rand that I don't have as a belief.
It says, my name is Zavan HCB Piers. I'm from the Kwet movement, national leader of the Kwet movement. I have some questions. When it comes to certain policies and certain declarations, why is the government biased? We talk about human rights, the Bill of Human Rights, which comes from the United Nations. We talk about the rights for racism and all that. But why are the other policies from the United Nations not implemented? Like the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declarations for Rights for Indigenous People, who was signed by this president and another 100+ nations worldwide. In 2007, it was already signed. Why was it never implemented? We talk about apartheid. Like apartheid is the root cause. We do not address the other historical trauma. We do not address colonialism. We still focus on Europe-centric views, and we fail to have African-centric views. So that is what I want to ask. Where is the restorative justice for the Kwet people? Where is the reparations? Why can we not look at chapter 25 of the Constitution? It needs to be amended. Kai gangangs.
Thokozani, let me start by greeting everyone and thank you, the chairperson, for allowing me the opportunity to ask the question. My name is Chipiwa Nitsanda from Kamba project that works with the traditional health practitioner sector. I'm also the chairperson of the traditional health practitioner sector in the Civil Society Forum. My concern is regarding the sector as I've been listening to the speakers speak on justice, and my concern is that there isn't anything actually that is being said that is alluding to addressing issues that are being faced by the traditional health practitioner sector, especially when it comes to human rights and justice. I also believe that the traditional health practitioner sector plays a vital role in promoting social cohesion, conflict resolutions, and access to justice within South African communities. And we are also the custodians of the indigenous knowledge system. So we do contribute in a lot of dispute resolution, crime prevention, and the protection of vulnerable populations. But I feel that the lack of a proper act and policies to govern this sector, it's also a loophole that is allowing all these things that are happening. And even when there are issues that have to be addressed, whether from the police station or in the court, there's always a reflection to that there is no act that is governing this. Even though that there is an interim council that has been established, But the act that is there also only speaks to the establishment of the interim council, but not speaking to the practice on its own and all the issues that are happening within the sector or the practice. So what I want to find out from the panelists, the Deputy Minister and the Minister, is there any plans or engagement in order to resolve this? I thank you.
Director of Mission Society Care. It's an NGO that is based nationally, and it's a holistic approach nationally, and it's a holistic approach. We have these issues in our premises. The first thing that I want to sort of talk to all the panel people, you were spot on, but Mr. Madlongosi, about the TRC, you know, these things, I think I'm grateful that we got this opportunity to be here, to listen to the minister and the deputy and all other speakers. But the TRC, it brings wound, it brings anger, it brings hate. But we said, okay, we have sort of forgiven them, but we don't forget what has happened. You know, there's nobody who talks about 1976. We were running around, hiding, and there was this police, and our home were burnt to ashes, everything. But those trauma, those issues, I think the justice, there is no justice to all the people who have undergone traumatic issue. We see this behavior, we see this happening. It's because people are hurting. People are really in pain. It's how they react. So traumatic counseling is the basic thing. And also, we need to look into justice for all. When I don't have money, when I don't have money to appeal, when I don't have resources to go to constitutional court, where they'll tell me there's a gap here, there's this, then I don't get the justice. So justice needs to be on the ground level, where anybody can access that. I heard my sister saying in KwaZulu-Natal, they work with all other stakeholders. We need to have stakeholders that will be chosen by us, not people who will mushroom and go to the higher podium and they say they represent us without taking into place our issues. Lastly, about the GBV. You know, there are so many gaps and open wounds and things. Women are being killed day in and out, and children and all that. As I say, we work with women sector. But the thing that is important, GBV, we want to know, where are the resources of GBV? Where are the resources of COVID-19? Where are the, we need accountability, transparency. Our constitution talks to accountability, transparency, and responsibility, including in the churches. Because churches now, they give people all these sorts of things. We need pastors who are real pastors, who've been ordained, who know what they are doing and what they are saying, and it needs to cut across. I thank you.
Sorry.
Tobe. Oh, Lina France Mojana.
Sorry. I will call you on the next round. I'm not sure how you got the microphone. We'll have the opportunity for questions later.
I was not going to say anything until the last man who gave a presentation. I just want to understand, we always talk about rights, right? And someone spoke about how we need to be accountable. Now, most of the time it's always about people's rights, but we never talk about responsibility. Like you mentioned the incident of miners, illegal miners going underground and getting stuck there, and those miners had rights They also had rights also. But we never, I mean, were adults. These were not children. These were adults who know what's wrong and what's right, who knows that they were not supposed to go inside there, but they went anyway. So I'm also going to talk about schools. I work mainly with schools. And I witnessed how kids have more rights than adults, than their teachers. They slap their teachers, they insult their teachers each and every day. Because those kids, they understand that they have rights, but nothing about the responsibilities that they have as children. So I'll be happy if you address that.
Thank you. We've come to the first round of questions. Again, don't be dismayed. I know there were lots of other hands coming up. We will see what questions we can take in the next round. And towards the end, if there are questions unanswered, we'll consolidate and do a roundup. And Minister and DM will also address you towards the end. So questions coming through now won't be answered immediately. We're gonna, in the interest of time, just give an opportunity to our panelists to round up or respond to any of the points that came up in 2 minutes, if you don't mind. I know that's a bit of a tall order. So I'll start with you in the end and go across to you, Dr. Kimi, and then to Dr. Martins, and then we'll end off with you, Commissioner Madlingozi, so you can organize your thoughts.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you to the questions and the leaders that spoke. I'll try and summarize in overall pointers for some of the questions that were posed. From my understanding, justice and the rule of law, it's a thread that cuts across all the different needs. From birth to death, there's the law. And so I think it's very important that we acknowledge, and one of the ways in which we can acknowledge is to say, for community-based workers, like community-based paralegals and other types of civil society actors that are working in communities, these types of engagements are important, but it's also to note that when you are partnering, we are not equally yoked. Some of us, I think as Mmamoloko and some of the leaders have spoken, when you're assisting people, you are doing it from a very resource-constrained position. And as much as you want to assist, sometimes you cannot, because the resources that are at your disposal are not permitting you to provide the necessary support. I think my call, and I want to echo the call of the speakers that spoke, is that part of this engagement with civil society is to look at a mechanism of resourcing, look at a mechanism of strengthening civil society actors, particularly those that are working in the access to justice space. Those that are providing paralegal services and those that are providing access to justice and human rights services in communities. That's the first one. The second one, which was the point around engaging with international statutes and the likes. South Africa is one of the founding members for the Open Government Partnerships Forum, which is an international forum that is advocating for these types of partnerships, open partnerships between government, between civil society actors and communities. I think from my end, I would urge, I know that South Africa currently, the OGP sits within the Department of Public Service and Administration, and I know that there has been engagement with the department. One of the ideals in which OGP is being approached in South Africa is that it is going to be approached as a joint effort, including the African peer review mechanism. And I think that provides a basis and opportunity for us to include in our responses some of the international declarations that are there. Just lastly, on the last point around statutory recognition. The paralegal sector in South Africa has been advocating for statutory recognition, the professional identity of paralegals working in advice offices or paralegals working in community-based organizations. There's been processes that have been started, but it has not been finalized. And I think that could be a space where this body or this forum could actually assist the civil society space to have a voice, to have recognition, and to be able to engage with the department, but being guided by a framework that is governed in law and by policies that are actually included in the department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kibi?
Okay, I think I'll maybe just answer the last question directly. There's no such thing as too many rights. You know, you can steal money from the state, and you have opportunities to make representations to the NPA and go through legal processes. Maybe the charges get dropped, maybe the charges get amended. But were those same rights afforded to those minors? No. I think that the lesson we have to learn is that if we don't speak up for even the smallest rights violations, no one is going to be around to speak up when it's your turn to have your rights violated. And you may think that time will never come because you're all good people and you're all law-abiding. But who decides? Who decides that you're a good person? Is some policeman going to decide that he doesn't like the look of you, or maybe you don't look South African enough, or you don't speak the right language, and you don't deserve your rights? Who's going to speak up for you then? The obligation is on all of us to speak up every time we see someone's rights being violated. There can be no compromise. You want to see what the result of a compromise is, you can look around the world and see what happens when people start compromising on rights and they decide that some group's rights can be sacrificed for the greater good. It does not end well. So let's not make that mistake. We don't have to agree with everyone. We don't have to agree with people's lifestyle choices. We don't have to agree with what they do. We're not being asked to make that moral judgment. We're just being asked to say, if they have rights, those rights must be protected, and the protection must be absolute.
Thank you, Dr. Kimi. Over to you, Dr. Marcus.
Thank you. I really appreciate an opportunity to talk about community-based justice. Minister of Justice, I'm very, very pleased that you committed to increase access to justice through recognizing justice mechanism from the community advice offices, from other avenues like the traditional justice system. The cost of accessing justice is very cheap. And people don't want to wait long for justice. They want justice that is fast, swift, and they get the remedies that they deserve. If we can decrease the length of time where people wait to access justice, that will be justice achieved. The more prolonged the process is and procedures, that is justice denied because people ended up giving up. You know, the issue of widows is very familiar. Families are struggling, families are suffering because of the court process. Others suffering because of the court process. Others die without getting any reprieve from stress because they want things to happen. I really commend the Department of Justice for this kind of convening. It's giving us hope. And we have a minister that is prepared to work with us and make sure that justice prevails. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will start where you also ended, which is to hold the department accountable, the DG and the minister, on the issue of the equality courts. The equality courts were supposed to be a quick and effective vehicle for access to justice. But DG, the equality courts continue to be underutilized. The equality courts are still unknown. We undertook research 2 years ago as the South African Human Rights Commission that shows that there are a number of problems with the equality court. when you go to magistrate courts and you speak to court clerks, they don't know that it's also an equality court. There are no visible signs. The training of presiding officers, also a big problem. And then lastly, DG, the Equality Court Review Committee, that it was supposed to be set up in terms of Section 32 of PEPUDA is still outstanding, so we look forward to that. In our vision as a South African Human Rights Commission, the vision is together respecting human rights. Together respecting human rights. So respect is there in our vision. You are quite right, rights come with responsibilities. But as the doc has said, there are certain marginalized communities that need proactive, help as far as human rights are concerned. On the Stilfontein issue, we will be convening an inquiry in May, and I hope you also make a submission. The inquiry is not only on Stilfontein, it's on artisanal mining. 3 aspects that we are looking at. The first one is what you have talked to. What are the human rights impact of artisanal mining, illegal mining on communities? Because we know there's criminality, there's human trafficking, there's syndicates in illegal mining. So that is a responsibility that we are looking at. What are the human rights implications of artisanal mining? But secondly, we are looking at the policy framework. There is no proper policy framework. And here we have to hold the state accountable, that there is no proper policy framework around mine closures, around rehabilitation of mines and so forth. But lastly, without fear or favor, looking at the scope and tactics that are being applied in Operation Valamugoti. Is the starvation of people in line with human rights as a form of policing? People who cannot by themselves come out of the mine shaft. Is it a right thing that in South Africa we are saying the use of starvation as a method of policing should be allowed? Those are some of the questions that we'll be looking at. Lastly, next month we will be launching our campaign called Promotion of Human Rights through the Resolving of the National Question. Through the resolving of the national question. And it speaks to, number one, the issue of reparation that Colette was talking about. That we have to say there is no culture of human rights without equitable redistribution of resources, without restitution, without reparation. Social cohesion, as we have conceived in South Africa, is unfair. It's about reconciliation without redress. So we need to speak to that. The issues of the Khoi and the San, there is no doubt there is a historical marginalization of the community. There is no doubt that as a Human Rights Commission we have not done enough. We convened an inquiry 10 years ago on the issues of the Khoi and the San. But those recommendations have still not been implemented. So there is no doubt that when we talk about traditional leadership, when we talk about issues of land, when we talk about issues of language, we really need to also focus on these communities. So that is part of the campaign that we are launching next month, which is this national question campaign about how do we, recognize the injustice of the past, but also pay respect to all those who suffered. Genocide in Palestine, there was genocide in South Africa of the San, but we have not commemorated that genocide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's going to be impossible. I'm not going to attempt to summarize this panel. As I said, we'll summarize towards the end. All that's left then, given the interest of time, is to thank the panelists. And I also want to thank the audience for the spirit in which the conversation and the dialogue has commenced. With that said, I'm going to now call on my colleague, Advocate Kanyani Matibe, who is the Acting Chief Master in the Department of Justice, and her panelists. And as they come up, I just want to also make an announcement. We're not going to stop for the break. If you need a comfort break, there are refreshments on the side. Please take your break as you feel comfortable. We're just a very big group. It's not going to work. We lose time. And then we will close. After we close, we will then have lunch. So I just wanted to give you a sense of the order of proceedings. It's also extremely hot in the room. So you are please asked to perhaps go outside, refresh yourself, and come in just to manage the heat. It's incredible. So thank you, panelists, and over to the next panel.
Good afternoon. If we could please just settle down. It is an honor for me to facilitate this next critical discussion, which is strengthening family law services to promote the best interest of the child or children. And I think Mayor Khololo opened it up very nicely with the question that she asked regarding letters of executorship and letters of authority. For us, this specific subject, it's at the heart of the justice system's commitment to protecting the rights and well-being of children and who are the most vulnerable members of our society. I am not alone. I am accompanied by a panel of experts in their field, and I would like to just call upon to the stage Mr. Linda Mate from the Law Reform Commission, Mr. Linda Mate, and as well as Ms. Euphemia Daniels, who is the Chief Director in the Office of the Chief Master. And I would like to welcome Ms. Gravenstein from the Social Justice Foundation. Please come and join me on the stage. And I would also like to welcome the last panelist, Mr. P. Mkhize, also from the South African Law Reform Commission. Good afternoon. As introduced, my name is Kanyani Matibe. I am the Acting Chief Master of the High Court. And as we start this topic of strengthening family law services, I would like to welcome you all. Please come this side, Mr. Mkhize, this side. This chair. Thank you. And to start off with, because there is a question that is already standing on the floor regarding letters of executorship for widows that suffer after the passing of a loved one. I would like to start with Ms. Daniels to say, how is the Master's Office going to strengthen family law services by protecting the rights and interests of children, given what has been asked now? And maybe briefly speak about child-headed households in South Africa. How do we strengthen and protect the rights of those children in child-headed homes? What does the Master do, and what do you intend to do in the future if it's not already done?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. So the Master of the High Court plays a critical role in the lives of all South Africans, whether it's a death, insolvency, a trust, or the Guardians Fund. We play a role in terms of that. However, the greatest part that we play in is deceased estates, because death knocks on everybody's door. And it's during a bereavement that most of our people don't know what to do. And at the end of the day, we find that in most instances, there is issues with child-headed households where the children have lost their only guardian and they do not know what to do, then it is incumbent of the family members to come to the Master's office, and we would then have to advise. But similarly so, you find that when death knocks, it escalates in a lot of family feuds in terms of people indicating that it's their right to inheritance, although it does not necessarily say so because we have laws governing. But one critical point that is not being discussed is the importance of wills. So my question then to you is, how have you made sure that you have safeguarded your children, your loved one, against somebody who might be unscrupulous at the end of the day and that want to take the estate for himself or herself? A will is a very critical and important document that at the end of the day dictates what your last wishes are, what you want to happen in your estate, who is supposed to inherit from your estate. However, it would appear that most of our South Africans pass away dying intestate. Intestate meaning you have not left a will, and therefore there is a law that will determine who will inherit from your estate. Whereas you have freedom of testation, where you would say, I do not want so-and-so to inherit from my estate, I am nominating so-and-so. I am nominating this person in the absence of any legal guardian to be the guardian of my children. Somebody that you know will safeguard the rights of your children, that will look after your children. So what we have aimed at is to talk about the democratization of wills, the importance thereof, why you should be having a will. We've had in last September, the whole month of September, Wills Week, and the outcry that we've seen is huge. However, it should
the interest of children. Are they well protected now? Have you revised any of the legislation that stands in respect of children? What can we see as a child and as a family? What should